Hey everyone, welcome to OJ Discusses Movies, a show in which I discuss movies, both old and new. Hopefully all of you guys who are in the East Coast are okay, due to the amount of snow that we received over the past day or two. So hopefully you guys are all chilled and cooped up in your home. I did watch a new movie this past weekend. That new movie is titled How to Make a Killing, directed by John Patton Ford. This is the follow-up to his 2022 film, Emily the Criminal, starring Aubrey Plaza, for which that film received universal praise. This film depicts Glenn Powell, who plays Beckett Redfellow, an individual who is excommunicated from his wealthy family, who decides to kill off the remaining members of his family to gain his grandfather's inheritance. It deals with the ups and the downs, the twists and the turns of that mission. And heading to the theater, I had very low expectations for this film. In fact, I didn't know what the film was even about. I didn't watch any of the trailers. I didn't watch any of the other reviews that were out on YouTube or read up on any articles about this movie in particular. So I went into this movie very cold. After watching the movie, I was thoroughly surprised by how good this movie is. When I left the theater, I saw a lot of individuals not enjoy this movie. In fact, it's not doing that well critically. It's at 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. I feel like that's a little bit too harsh. This film is good. I'll get into my positives right now. The acting, the performances are all great. I thought all of the performances were amazing. Glenn Powell really steals the show as an individual who is hell-bent on gaining as much money as possible. Again, he is an individual who is currently living in the modern day, who is down on his luck, working these odd shifts, odd jobs, getting relocated to other facilities, not doing what he wants to do in life, but he realizes what his goal is, and is to make sure that he makes ends meet, but also gets revenge on the same people who essentially treated his mother like garbage. And when you see his performance in this movie, it's admirable. And while it's not necessarily the best performance I could think of in terms of who could give a performance of this nature, it definitely did serve the role well. And it really elevated the campiness to this movie. To me, this is what The Running Man should have been if The Running Man was made well. I wanted The Running Man to be this movie. A film that embraces the campiness, that embraces the cheesiness, if you will, but also has an underlying message with the movie. What I also really enjoyed was the costume design. Throughout this entire movie, Glenn Powell is wearing a suit. And there are times in which you just look at the color combinations between the suit, the tie, the undershirt, the button-up shirt that he wears, as well as the backpacks and the satchels that he wears, and you think to yourself, a lot of time and effort was put into the overall presentation of this movie. The cinematography was also great. And when I say performances, I also include that of, say, Zach Woods and that of Topher Grace.
I want you to kill Peter Parker.
Topher Grace plays one of Beckett Redfellow's cousins. He's this preacher who has embraced the idea of being a megachurch pastor and how that kind of comes to bite him in the rear end. But again, the humor in this movie really shone through in several moments of the film. There are times in which there's just a hard cut to funerals being occurred, and it's just hilarious. There's just the hard cut to just somebody holding up a casket outside the Redfellow estate as all the other family members are there is hilarious. I think it's fun. Now, there are negatives to this film, but most of my negatives are nitpicks. One negative that I had in this film was Margaret Qualley's character. I don't mind Margaret Qualley. I think she's a pretty talented actor. She's starred in some amazing films such as The Substance and other not so amazing films such as Honey Don't. But I felt as if her character was kind of just misplaced, because there are times in which she just enters into areas where you think to yourself, shouldn't there be security? Right? Shouldn't there be security? There are times in which she enters into Redfellow's workplace, and you think to yourself, well, Beckett Redfellow had to enter into security when he went into Margaret Qualley's husband's workplace. So wouldn't there be security at his place as well? I mean, he works at one of the most sought after firms within the tri-state area. You might think for a second that there might be security at that place. But again, that's just a nitpick, and that's just me trying to think about this movie. For a while, I thought that Margaret Qualley was his conscience.
I just did another joke that didn't go over. I'm your conscience.
I thought for a second that it was just the, Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation where you sort of see yourself think in a more critical way about what you're doing and the motives for what you're doing. But that didn't come into fruition. And again, this is just an nitpick, but when you watch the movie, there is the FBI involved. And while watching it, you might think to yourself, why is the FBI this incompetent? Why aren't they really taking this investigation that seriously? And then you juxtapose that with the modern day FBI and how little they care about their own proceedings. And you think to yourself, no, that's a pretty accurate depiction.
Because Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie and her siblings are now publicly pleading for the safe return of their missing mother. In a raw and heart-wrenching video posted on social media last night, the family made a direct appeal to any possible abductor of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, who was last seen at her home near Tucson on Saturday night in what police believe may have been a kidnapping.
That's a pretty accurate depiction. So those are just my negatives. When I finished this movie, my original Letterboxd review or thought on this movie was, this is just the poor man's version of No Other Choice. And a part of me still believes in that. It's more or less just that version. But then I read up on Wikipedia that this film is loosely inspired by Kind Hearts and Coronets, the 1949 film starring Alec Guinness. And I watched that movie later on in that day. And it's more or less the same movie. And now it's a modern tale of that plot and of that story, but it's more or less just the same movie. So if you like Kind Hearts and Coronets, you'll enjoy this movie. If you haven't watched Kind Hearts and Coronets, I suggest you guys watch that movie. But yeah, it's, in my opinion, it's just the 2026 version of Novocaine. In a lot of ways, it feels very similar to Novocaine. Now, there aren't that many action set pieces compared to Novocaine. Novocaine is a lot more of a tighter script with better pacing. But I thought this film was fun. And if you want to go into the movie theater expecting a good time, expecting camp, and just likable leads and a fun overall script and great characters, side characters, then you'll definitely enjoy this movie. So yeah, those are my thoughts on How to Make a Killing. The bookshop has been updated, so definitely check it out. It's probably going to be a Nick Cave book, The Death of Buddy Munro. I'm probably going to read his follow-up to that, which is Faith, Hope, and Carnage, later. But yes, that is my review on How to Make a Killing, and I'll see you guys soon. Enjoy, stay safe with the snow.